AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini have been around for a while now, and they're smart enough to generate all kinds of text-based output, including code from pretty much any programming language. So here's the real question. How much do you really need to learn about a technical topic like VBA, given that AI can do much of the hard lifting? Let's say our goal is to be good, just good enough to build workable, stable solutions. And I believe we can get there in under 30 minutes. And to do that, we need to build on 3 core skills. First, get a basic understanding of VBA syntax and get a feel of the coding environment. Secondly, learn how to interact effectively with the AI tool of your choice. We will explore Google's framework for good prompting using VBA examples. And third, adopt a solution mindset where you break down problems logically, build modular code, and test thoroughly. Now I've said 3 skills, but only the first one is about VBA. Today, knowing how to work with AI is a core skill in itself. So the concepts we cover today will go way beyond VBA, and the same goes for having a solution mindset. That's basically how you approach any problem in a professional environment. Before we dive into learning VBA with the help of AI, let's take a quick minute to get comfortable using AI chatbots or AI assistants. So what are AI assistants? AI assistants are intelligent chat tools that understand natural language and can help you write, debug, and explain code just by chatting with them. Examples include ChatGPT by OpenAI, Gemini by Google. In this course, we will mainly use ChatGPT, but the same ideas apply to both. So let's get started. Go to chatgpt.com. I will suggest logging in. You could use your Gmail account. Once you're in, you will see a text box. That's where you type your prompt, which is basically asking your question or task, and then hit enter to send it. Let's do an example. You could type, write a VBA macro to copy data from one sheet to another, enter, and ChatGPT will generate the code for you in seconds. To start a new chat, click New Chat on the left. This gives you a clean slate so that the AI can focus completely on your new request. And that's it. You're now ready to start using ChatGPT as your personal VBA copilot. Let's build the picture first. What is VBA, what it can do, and why should we learn it in this day and age? VBA stands for Visual Basic for Applications. It's a programming language built directly into Microsoft Office, especially Excel. And for this video, we will stick to Excel. So using VBA, you can teach Excel how to follow a set of instructions in a step-by-step sequence. At its most basic level, VBA can help you automate repetitive stuff like formatting cells, copying data between sheets, generating reports, but that's just scratching the surface. VBA is also your entry point to automating tasks beyond Excel. For example, you can open and manipulate other Office apps, such as sending a customized Outlook email, read and write to text or CSV files, loop through a folder of files, deleting or moving them based on, say, the last modified date, and even run commands in the Windows shell, such as zipping files or calling a batch script. In that sense, even though VBA lives inside Excel, it can reach far beyond it. And now you might be wondering, why use VBA at all in this day and age? Aren't there better, newer tools such as Python or PowerShell and low-code platforms such as Power Automate and Make? Yes, there are, but here's the catch. Tools like Python or PowerShell are often restricted in corporate environments. They require external permissions or elevated access. Tools like Power Automate usually require paid licenses for most connectors, and the flows can become real complex real fast. And if you want to work in corporate environments, you probably won't be able to use third-party tools such as Zapier or Make. VBA, on the other hand, is already in Excel. And Excel is pretty much everywhere. It's the one app that every business person uses. You already have it, you don't need admin rights, you don't need to convince IT, and you definitely don't need to pay extra. Okay, let's write your first macro. Open a new Excel workbook. I'm going to use a desktop application. We write code in the VB editor, which is Excel's backstage. To open it, go to the developer tab. If you don't see it, right-click the ribbon, customize the ribbon, and enable developer. Then click on Visual Basic, or you can just hit Alt F11 on your keyboard. Let's create a simple macro. In the VB editor, on the left panel, right-click on the VBA project, hover over Insert, then click on Module. This creates a blank page where you can write code. Modules are like notebooks where your macro lives. Now first I'm going to type the macro in by hand. Okay, let's break this down. Sub say hello. This line is how we define a macro. Sub means subroutine, which is just a fancy name for a piece of code that runs when you call it. MSG box stands for message box. It shows a little pop-up with whatever message you want to put in the quotes. And nsub tells VBA that this is the end of the macro. It's a good practice to indent your code for easy reading. So press tab before message box. To run this macro, place your cursor anywhere inside the code and press this run button in the toolbar, or just hit F5 and you will see a nice little pop-up. Hello world. Congratulations, you have just written your first VBA macro. Now let's get AI to do the same. Open ChatGPT or even Gemini. Let's type something like this. I am new to VBA. Please write a macro that shows the message saying hello world. Great. Copy the code, paste it into a module, run it, and that's it. And just a quick side note, when you create a new module, you might see a line at the top that says option explicit. Whether it appears or not depends on a setting in the VB editor. We won't go into what it does right now, but just be aware of it. If it shows up, you can delete it or you can leave it there. But just make sure that any code you write goes below that line. Now you're capable of asking AI to generate code and running it yourself in VBA. But as your requirements get more complex, a little bit more understanding of the underlying syntax will increase your confidence in using this AI-generated code in your VBA project. And a quick tip, if you're unsure, just ask AI, what are the risks of running this code? Here we're not doing much, but suppose you're pasting data into a worksheet. The AI model would then warn us that any data existing in the worksheet would get overridden. Okay, let's move on to saving your work. Regular .xlsx files won't save macros. You need to use File, Save As, and choose the Excel macro enabled workbook with the extension .xlsm. Otherwise, your code will get wiped out. Now that you've written your first macro, let's step it up. This section will give you a foundational understanding of VBA's key building blocks. These are concepts that VBA developers use every day, and they're essential if you want to use AI-generated code, debug problems, and build reliable automation. First up, variables. Variables are like label boxes where you store data temporarily when your macro runs. So here's some code that defines, assigns, and uses a variable. Let's look at the key parts. Dim means declare. So you're telling VBA to reserve space for a variable. My name is the name of the variable. As string tells VBA that this variable will hold a text value. And in this line here, my name is equal to Ashwin. Here we are assigning the text value Ashwin to the variable my name. And now VBA will remember this value going forward in the code. So in the next line, we're going to use that variable and generate a pop-up message. And just one thing to note is that we use ampersand to join two parts of text. So we have a hard-coded text value and the text value from the variable name. Let's run this macro. We get a pop-up message. As the name suggests, we can change the value assigned to a variable. So let's add some new code and assign a new value to the variable my name. We'll assign the value Ash this time, add another message box, but we'll add in some different text this time. Run the macro. We get our first message with the value Ashwin in it, and the next message has the value Ash. We can store numbers, dates, texts, even entire objects like an Excel worksheet or a cell inside a variable. We also have constants. If you want to store a value that won't change, you can use the keyword const instead of dim. So for example, here we're declaring my name as a constant, and we can place the declarations for the constant outside the sub as well. Next, let's look at how to talk to Excel. This is the most common thing that you will do in VBA, and it follows a very simple but powerful two-step process. Step 1 is accessing the object you want to work with, and step 2 is doing something with it. So here's an example. Let's break this down. This initial part is step 1, where we are accessing the cell A1 within a specific worksheet named example. And dot value is equal to hello from VBA represents step 2. Here we're doing something specific with the cell, in this case writing a value into it. And notice the dots. In VBA, everything you interact with in Excel is an object, like a workbook, worksheet, or cell. These objects form a hierarchy and you navigate them using dots, like going from sheets to a cell and then doing something with it. And here's a simple way to think about it. To knock on my door, you need to first come to my street, then to my house, and then you can knock on my door. Another example, in this code, range B2 is where we access the cell, and the rest font and bold is equal to true is the code to change the font in the cell to bold. This two-step structure is everywhere in VBA. Once you understand this logic, you can confidently read and modify most AI-generated code. And notice that no sheet is referenced here. This means that we are referring to whichever sheet is currently selected in Excel. We can even dynamically refer to a cell by using the intersection of the row and column. So here's the syntax for it. And here in the code, cells 3, 2 refers to the cell in the third row and second column, which is cell B3. This way of referencing becomes really handy when you're working with loops because you can plug in variables to move across rows or columns automatically. Now suppose you want to talk to other applications like Outlook, Word, or even the Windows file system. The logic here has 3 steps. Establish a connection to the other application, access the object inside that application, and do something with it. Let's look at some code to send an email through Outlook. This part where we set this object variable using the create object function is a step 1, which sets up the link between VBA and Outlook. .create item 0 is step 2, which creates a new mail item or basically an email draft and assigns it to the variable mail. So yes, we can store objects within variables as well. And step 3 is where we fill out the subject, body, recipient, and then send the mail. So let's look at a tip. If you're setting multiple properties on the same object, just as we have out here, you can use a with block. Let's look at comments and documentation. Anything after a single quote is a comment. VBA ignores it, but humans, including future you, will appreciate it. Use comments to explain what a macro or block of code does, describe tricky logic, or leave reminders for yourself to address afterwards. And even better, once your code is working, ask the AI to write a step-by-step summary in plain English to tell what this macro does. Or you can even write a process document based on this VBA macro. This is a great way to generate user documentation or internal guides for your automation, something professionals always need to deliver. And even better, give the AI a sample template that you created manually previously before and ask it to create the documentation based on that template. We will talk more about this style of prompting in a section on prompting based on Google's framework. Moving on to if statements. Let's say you want your macro to make decisions like if the score is above 80, say well done. Otherwise, ask them to try again. So here's the code for that. This is a basic if, then, else structure. Our condition here is if score is greater than equal to 80. And if this condition is true, then we'll have a message saying great job. Otherwise or else, we will display keep trying. And you can expand this logic using else if. So here's another condition. If the score is greater than or equal to 90, then display one message. Else if the score is greater than or equal to 80, then display another message. And if none of these conditions are met, then we will display keep trying. If statements are at the heart of programming and allow you to make your code dynamic enough to handle a variety of scenarios. An alternate to if statements is the select case structure, which the AI may generate occasionally in its code. Select case is used when we are comparing the same value against multiple options. For example, we could write the previous code using select case like this. And if you're unsure, just ask AI to explain the logic line by line back to you. This back and forth with the AI is a great way to learn more techniques in programming. Moving on to something even more powerful, loops. Loops let you repeat tasks row by row, file by file, or item by item with the logic baked in. Suppose we want to write the number values from 1 to 5 into each cell from row 1 to 5 and in the first column. We could write 5 lines of code like this. This does look a bit redundant. One basic programming concept is T.C.R.E.I, don't repeat yourself. So let's do something about this. Notice each line mostly looks the same with only the row number and cell value incrementing. Imagine doing this for 100 rows. It's just not practical. We could reproduce this same logic with a loop, as we can see on the screen. This for next structure is a loop. We have assigned a variable to start from the value 1 and keep increasing by 1 each time till it reaches 5. Each increment will happen between the for and next statements. And here we can do anything what we want with the current value of I. In our case, we will write that value into our current cell. And notice the current cell also holds the current value of I, which is a placeholder for the current row. And to drive this point home, suppose we have a header in row 1. Now we want to write the values 1 to 5 in the rows from 2 to 6. Our code will now look like this, where the current value being written into the current cell is still I, but we are adding 1 to the current row to skip the first row. A bit mind-bending, but you will get the hang of it as you start using it. As your projects grow, modular code becomes essential. Instead of writing one massive 200-line macro, break your logic into smaller, reusable pieces like building blocks. To do this, we have subs and functions. A sub is a self-contained piece of code that performs a task. We have already seen this structure, but what's great is that you can call this sub from another sub. Notice the use of the keyword call, which is optional. Let's run this macro. We get a message. A function is like a sub, but the difference is that it returns a value. We have an example of a function on the screen. What this function does is that it takes a number as an input, in this case a price. It multiplies that price by 0.9, which is basically giving a 10% discount, and it returns the discounted price, which is shown by assigning the final calculated value back to the name of the function. Let's look at how to use it in another macro. So we can call the function here, pass in the price, which is represented by another variable, and the output of this function, which is the final calculated price, will be assigned to our final price variable. Functions are great for calculations and reusable logic. Instead of writing the same formula multiple times, just use a function and plug in the value. Let's look at debugging. Errors are natural. They happen to everyone, especially when working with AI-generated code. Resolving errors is called debugging. Let's talk about how to debug like a pro. We can use message boxes to check your code's progress. Here's an example. Let's say you're copying data from one sheet to another. You can drop in message box statements between each step. So if something breaks, you know exactly where you are. If it breaks before step 2, you know the issue is in identifying sheets. If it breaks before step 3, the issue is likely in the clear contents line. If it runs all the way, everything's worked, and you get a nice series of confirmations. It's one of the simplest and most effective ways to isolate problems. An alternative would be using the debug.print statement. So just substitute message box with debug.print. We need our immediate window open for that. Go to view, click on immediate window. You can resize it down if you want. Now let's run our code. The confirmations get printed this time in the immediate window instead of getting those annoying pop-ups. One common error is syntax error. So let's look at this code. This line is going to throw an error. Let's run the macro. VBA won't let us. And we can see that the line is turned red because it's expecting a then at the end of this line. What's the fix? Just add the missing word. Syntax errors are usually something small, like a missing double quote or mistyped keyword. And if you are stuck, just copy the line into ChatGPT or Gemini and ask what's wrong with this VBA line, and you'll get the fix instantly. Let's check out breakpoints. Let's say you want to see what's happening as your macro loops through these rows. Just set a breakpoint on the line where it reads the score. To add one, click on the left margin next to the line of the code in the VB editor. The background of the line will turn red, and that's your breakpoint. Run the macro. When it reaches that line, the execution of the macro pauses. You can hover over one of the variables to see their values. This is a great way to understand your code's flow, especially when something isn't working as expected. One more powerful debugging trick is stepping through your code line by line. Instead of pressing F5 to run your entire macro at once, press F8. When you hit F8, the name of your sub will be highlighted in yellow. That yellow line shows the next line of code that is going to be executed. Press F8 again and the execution moves forward. You'll notice it skips over variable declarations, and that's totally normal. Declarations are processed instantly and don't require line-by-line execution. Now keep pressing F8 to step through each line, and just like with breakpoint, you can hover over variables to see their current values. Stepping through your code is super helpful when you're trying to verify how your code flows, especially with AI-generated macros. Pair this technique with breakpoints to pause execution right before a specific line and use F8 to continue from there at your own pace. It's like watching your code unfold in slow motion, and it's great for catching logic bugs, runtime issues, or just gaining a better understanding of what's happening under the hood. And what do we do when there's an error? Let's run this code. Our macro crashes with a pop-up saying a runtime error. That means VBA tried to access something like a worksheet that doesn't exist. When you click debug, you'll see the offending line highlighted. And now what? First check, does the sheet named report actually exist? If not, that's your answer. Fix the name or add the sheet. Or you can copy the error message and the line of code and ask ChatGPT or Gemini. You can even take a screenshot and paste it along with your code. You'll always get a quick, helpful response. And now you've learned how to handle that error in the future. Let's finish with something visual and useful, adding a button to run your macro. Go to the developer tab, click insert, button. We want to choose this form control one. Draw the button onto your sheet. When prompted, select the macro that you want to run, click OK, and you're done. Now let's click the button and we get a pop-up message. Now anyone, even someone who has never opened the VB editor, can run your macro with a single click. It's perfect for dashboards, reports, or other user tools. And that's it for this part on VBA. The next two parts on prompting and design are more generic. While we will continue to focus on VBA, the points covered can be applied to any other area as well. Alright, you've got the basics of VBA down. You know what a sub is, you know how to talk to Excel, and you know how to debug a problem. And now for the fun part, making AI your expert coding partner. Have you ever asked AI for help with Excel, but the answer it gave back to you just didn't quite work? That's not because AI isn't smart. It's because the way we ask matters. Getting AI to write code is easy, but getting it to write the right code, the code that fits your specific sheet, solves your unique problem, and works on the first try, that's a skill. And it all comes down to how you ask. This is called prompting, but don't let the jargon fool you. It just means giving clear instructions. Vague prompts get vague, often useless code, but a great prompt can turn AI into a senior developer who knows exactly what you need. And that's what we want. To get pro results every time, we're going to use a simple but powerful framework from Google, T.C.R.E.I. T is for task. Every prompt starts with a clear task. You need to tell AI exactly what you need to do. But here's the trick. Give the AI a persona and specify a format. So a weak prompt would look something like, write a macro that highlights overdue tasks. This is missing crucial details. Instead, try something like this. You are a senior Excel VBA developer. Write a macro that reads a list of tasks from sheet 1 where column C contains due dates. If any date is earlier than today, highlight the entire row in red and add comments to explain each part of the code. And do you see the difference? We have now told AI who it is, so it's a senior dev, what to do, that is highlight overdue rows, where to look, so in sheet 1, column C, and how to output, so basically present a well-commented code. This level of detail gets you much more accurate results. Next in our framework comes C, which stands for context, and this is a game changer. The AI can't see your Excel file, so it doesn't know what you're trying to automate unless you explain it. So let's prompt with some context. In my Excel file, I have multiple sheets named Jan, Feb, March, etc. Each sheet contains sales data with header rows in row 1, and I want a macro that finds the total sales amount for each sheet and writes the total in cell F1 of the respective sheet. And I will be running this weekly. And now the AI understands the structure of your workbook and the goal. The more useful details you add, the better your results will be. Next is R for references. This one is often skipped, but it can dramatically improve your results. References are examples that guide the AI on your preferred style. This is also known as few-shot prompting. Let's look at an example. Here's a macro I used before that adds up column A. Use the same coding style, especially the variable naming and commenting, but apply it to column C and make sure to ignore any empty cells. By providing a reference, you guide the AI to match your existing structure, making the new code feel consistent and familiar. Next is E, which stands for evaluate. Once the AI gives you a result, stop and check it. Read through the code. See whether it actually does what you asked. Are the logic and assumptions correct? And is anything missing? This is where your new VBA knowledge from part 1 of this video becomes your superpower. You don't need to write code from scratch. But you do need to be able to spot if the AI missed something. And if something is off, don't just start over. Iterate. Which brings us to the last point in the framework, which is I for iterate. And this is where the magic happens. Treat prompting like a conversation. You are the designer and AI is your assistant. And don't expect perfect code in one shot. The goal is to start with a good foundation and then keep refining it. Okay, now you can write basic VBA and you know how to prompt the AI to generate brilliant code for you. You have all the pieces. Now, let's put them all together. The biggest mistake people make is jumping straight from an idea to asking AI to generate the final solution for them. This is where projects fail. And let me give you the biggest piece of advice. The difference between an amateur and a professional isn't about knowing more syntax, it's about having a better process. This is the solution mindset. In the professional world, we normally do a process design, build the functional specs, write a technical documentation, which then gets handed to the development team. And the process that gets built by the dev team is only as good as the requirements that have been given to them. What I'm basically saying is, design is greater than build. Let's talk about first principles thinking. Ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve at the most basic level? Break the problem down into its core parts, input, action, outputs. This kind of thinking keeps you from copying messy old solutions and helps you build clean, purposeful automations from the ground up. So before you write a single prompt, stop. Grab a piece of paper or open a text file and map out the process in plain English. I would suggest a process mapping tool like draw.io or even good old PowerPoint will do. In fact, let's use that. Let's take an example. Suppose our goal is to automate a report that filters data, create a chart, and email it to our manager. Don't just go and ask AI, write a macro that does all of that. First think, what are the logical steps from start to finish? Let's start by clearing any old data from the report sheet and compare sheet. Then we will filter the data sheet for priority clients. Next, copy the visible filtered data, paste it into the report sheet starting at cell A1, create a bar chart on the compare sheet, paste on that pasted data, create a new email in Outlook, attach the entire workbook, set the subject to weekly priority report, and send it to our manager's email ID. And finally, we'll display a message saying report sent. Now, we have drawn all of these as separate steps, but I think we can group them logically. And we'll create a separate sub or macro for each group. So clear data could be a separate group. Let's put the filter, copy and paste steps in the next group. Creating the chart can be its own group. And let's club the remaining parts that relate to creating and sending the email in a separate group. Alright, this is your blueprint. And now you can use AI to build it piece by piece. First off, take a look at the Excel file. We have some data in the data sheet. The report and compare sheets are blank, but after our first run, these two sheets would have something in them. And Alt F11, we just have a blank module with no macros yet. Go to ChatGPT, make sure to begin a new chat. As mentioned earlier, each group will represent a single sub procedure. And later on, we will learn how to join each sub together. So let's first get the code for group 1. So our prompt will be, write a VBA sub that clears all the contents from the Excel sheet named report and any charts from the Excel sheet named compare. And let's just specify that we don't want any confirmation messages since we just want one at the very end. So we'll say, please don't add any confirmation messages. So we get some code here. Let's copy it, paste it into the VB editor, and let's test it out. There was no data to begin with, so running it didn't do much, but this sub did run from the start to the end successfully, which is a good sign. Move on to group 2. We're going to continue within the same chat. Our prompt will be, write a sub that filters the data sheet on column F for the value priority and copies the visible cells to the report sheet starting at cell A1. And again, please don't add any confirmation messages. Run the prompt. Let's copy this code, paste it below our previous sub, and let's test it out. And we can see some data has been pasted onto the report sheet, which has been filtered. Awesome. Moving on to group 3, our prompt will be, write a sub to create a bar chart from the data in the report sheet onto the compare sheet, paste on client name in column B and revenue in column D. Please don't add any confirmation messages. Hit enter. Copy the code, paste it below, test it out. Our chart has been created. And lastly, group 4. The prompt will be, now create an Outlook email, attach the entire workbook, set the subject to weekly priority report and send it to this email ID and show a report sent message. Enter. Copy. Paste our code, test the macro. I get a confirmation message, which is great, but did the email get sent? Let's open Outlook. So here's the sent email. We have our subject, weekly priority report. The workbook has been attached and it's gone to our manager. Fantastic. And now for the final part. So far, we have 4 separate subs, but we want to run it together in one go. That's simple. We just need to call each of these individual subs from a separate main sub. And we can build it ourselves or ask AI to do it for us. Let's ask AI. Okay. Now, please create a single sub that calls each of my previous 4 subs sequentially. I would like to run all 4 individual subs in one go. We'll hit enter. And here's our code. Copy. Let's paste it at the very top. Okay. So we have data from the previous run. What we can do is create a new line just to prove that our macro will work when we paste in new data. Okay. This is our main sub. Let's run it. We get a confirmation message saying report sent. And just to confirm, we have our chart with the latest entry as well. We have already covered the design and build phase. Now let's put our testing hat on. Once your macro works under the perfect condition, now start to think of creative ways to break it. For example, what happens if the datasheet is missing? What happens if there are no priority clients to filter, etc., etc. And you don't have to guess. Ask the AI to help you test. For example, here's my finished macro. What are the top 3 failure points? How would you add error handling to prevent this from crashing? And that's it. That's now the modern way to build solutions with VBA. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.